Hey guys, I'm Jessie, and today I am going to be wrapping up everything that I read in the month of October. In the month of October, I kind of challenged myself to read nothing but Fairyloot, Illumicrate books that I've gotten throughout the year. Some of these obviously last year, but most of them from 2022. And honestly, I think I did pretty good. I managed to finish 8 books. I'm still in the middle of 2 of them, and I did DNF 1. But I've been like DNFing like crazy lately, so the fact that I only DNF'd a single book in October is pretty good for me, because I expected to DNF more than 1. And I did almost DNF another one. But we'll get to that one, but I did finish it. So yeah, we're going to talk about everything I read. All of these are from Fairyloot, Illumicrate, and yeah, let me know what you think about these books. We will start with the DNF, and that is not really surprising. It's Book of Night by Holly Black. I was hoping that I would be like the minority in this and actually like it. Because from what I could tell, most of the people who did not like this book loved like Folk of the Air, The Cruel Prince, and I did not. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. I did not like the first book, and I did not read the others. And I have no desire to read the rest of that series because it was just not my thing. So I was like, okay, shadow magic, this sounds really cool. It's adult, and it just bored me. I made it, how many pages? Halfway. I made it 155 pages into this book, and I was like, I don't care. I didn't care about our main character, the romance, the mystery. Like, there were some interesting aspects, but it just never got interesting as a story. I did flip ahead and like read the end, and I'm not impressed. There were some things that I think happened that are like, really? But it's just not for me, and sadly I have 2 copies of this. One from, I think, Illumicrate and one from Fairyloot, so both of these will be going somewhere. Either to a niece who might like it more or my used bookstore. Now we will talk about ones that I have started but have not finished. And the first one is In the Ravenous Dark. And I only started this one recently. I'm only like 50 pages into it. And so far it's all right. I don't think it's going to be a new favorite, but that could change. We're only 50 pages in. But so far, it's all right. Like, the main character is interesting. She's like an unregistered blood mage, and she watched her father get taken by like the crown's blood mages and their guardians when she was just a kid, and like slaughtered in the streets. So she's kind of hidden who she is her whole life, and now she's kind of exposed herself and is being dragged in front of the crown to like be warded and all that stuff. So far it is interesting. I believe this does have a polyamorous relationship in it, which I have not gotten to. I'm very excited to get to that, but yeah, so far it's decent. And the other one that I've read, also about 50 pages of, is Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn. I'm not sure about this one. Again, like I said, I'm only like 50 pages in. I'm gonna give it a little longer, but I'm not really like feeling it. We're following this girl, and she is like 16. She's staying with her grandma for the summer like she does every year. And grandma always has told her, we are monsters. We can't tell people we are monsters. And she doesn't really like get what that means. She's like, okay, they like shoplift once in a while. But come to find out, they are like really monsters who steal time from normal humans and can like travel through time with that stolen time. Sounds interesting. Well, it starts out with our main girl going on this date with a boy that she really likes, and it's like kind of cringy. Things happen. She ends up missing the date. They end up kind of like having it again, and shit goes down, and they're attacked, and come to find out it's like he's a monster hunter and she's a monster. And I think there's a love triangle, but I haven't gotten that far yet. But there's another like male character that's introduced is like brooding and meh. And you're kind of like, okay, that's the second love interest, ain't it? So I don't know. It feels very young. So it is YA, but I feel like this is on the younger spectrum of the YA spectrum. Whatever I just said. But yeah, I feel like this is on the younger side of the YA spectrum. So honestly, this might be something that my niece would like more than me. But you never know. Now we will get to all of the books that I did finish. And y'all, it was a pretty good month. I don't think I had any like standout 5-star books, but I had quite a few 4 stars and a couple 3s. So you know what? All in all, not bad. First, I read Year of the Reaper, and this is a standalone YA fantasy. It is definitely not extremely fantastical. There's not really like magic. The fantasy element is that our main character can see ghosts and communicate with them, but that's not like a super huge part of the plot. Like it does a few things here and there, but it's never really a big mention, like a big part of the plot. Basically, we are following our main character who was kidnapped, and he is like a lord of this one land, and he is like kidnapped when he's on a mission and like imprisoned for 3 years and like beaten and all horrible things. And he finally manages to get out of prison because like the war is over, because the king of his land married a princess from the other land that they were at war at. So he manages to like, you know, there's peace and he manages to get back. Well, there's also this like big plague that's going around, very bubonic plague. I mean, there's mentions of rats. So like it's definitely inspired by that. And the reason he can see ghosts is because he got the plague, but he survived. And that's very, very uncommon. And I think that's why he can see ghosts. It never fully explains that. And honestly, I wish it would have. Like, there were still some questions that I had after reading this. Like, okay, like, why can he see ghosts? Like, there were things that weren't concluded, and this is a standalone. And while I like where it ended and it was a fun time reading it, like, it still left some, like, open-ended questions. So I'm like, is it really a standalone? Is there like a possibility of a sequel? I don't know. Maybe. But, you know, there were some twists and turns, and a lot of them were pretty easy to guess, but it was still a fun time reading it, if that makes sense. Next, I read Blood Scion, and y'all, this book was dark. I was not expecting it. I was not expecting this book to be this dark and this violent, and it was. But I really, I guess liked it isn't the best word, but like I did like this book a lot. I think I gave it 4 stars or 3 stars, somewhere in between. There were also some things about this book that bothered me, and it's not like the violence. So like content warnings for this book, it's about child soldiers. And it's inspired by like real life events and child soldiers. And it's difficult to read in parts. There is definitely mentions of SA, which is not on page, but it is definitely like heavily implied and mentioned. Loss of family members. There's murder, torture, mutilation, child soldiers, and it's rough, it's dark. But none of that is what bothered me enough to like dock it down some stars. What bothered me was the romance. It was awful. It needed not be in there. For one, it's like very insta-love, but it happens like over halfway through the book. And you're like, girl, what are you doing? And like, none of this makes sense. Like, why? Why? And then some of the plot twists were like, really? But I think it's the romance that bothered me the most out of everything. But this book was still good. I think it should have left out the romance element and it would have been really good. So we're following our main character, Sloane, and she is a Scion, but she is in hiding. So basically in this world, Scions are the people with the magic. And And when they are found, they are murdered. And that's because their kingdom has been taken over by another kingdom who just like slaughters them. And if you are found to be like harboring or protecting or helping in any way a Scion, then like it's like the whole family is genocided. Like the whole family is murdered. And they also have like a child army where they conscript children into the military. And our main girl gets conscripted into the military. She's still hiding the fact that she's a Scion and has to go through all of this like brutal training. And it's really hard. Some of it is really hard to read just because of the in-depth, dark details. And I really wanted to love this book, but like I said, the romance was terrible. And there were some things that didn't make sense. Like the fact that they're training these child soldiers and literally in 30 days to send to the front lines to be cannon fodder, right? They're like, okay, it's 30 days of training and then you're going to go to the front lines. They're basically cannon fodder. The thing that I don't get is if they are meant to go to like the front line and be cannon fodder, why is the training so rigorous and why are they literally killing 85% of the conscripted trainees like before they ever get to the front line? You would think they want quantity over quality for that, right? But no, they're looking for quality over quantity. So it's like only a very small percent make it out of training alive, which doesn't make sense to me. Like from a military standpoint, it doesn't make sense. Because you would think they'd want like everyone to just like shoo them off to the front, train them for 30 days, put a gun in their hand. Because they're cannon fodder. They're not like the real soldiers, the traditional army that's there for the actual brute strength. That just didn't make sense to me. But I still overall liked this book. And I will read the sequel, even though there's some things that I'm like, not so sure. I also read A Marvelous Light, and I really enjoyed this one. There were definitely some unexpected things in this book that I did not know were going to be in here. But I really had a good time with this. This is a like kind of Victorian England magical mystery with a male-male romance. It is so good. Our main two characters are Edwin and Robin. Edwin is the son of a lord and his parents have both died, but like they're kind of broke because their parents like to be showy. So like they really don't have a lot of money. He ends up with this like government job and he's not really sure why. And then he meets Edwin, who is supposed to be his like liaison in this job. Come to find out it is a magical job and Robin has no idea. And to have this job, you are supposed to be like versed in the magical world. So we're pretty sure that he was put there by accident or out of spite. And while they're initially planning to be like, hey, he's just gonna resign, like this is not right, Robin ends up cursed. So Edwin is having to help him remove this curse because his predecessor was murdered. And this group of people thinks that now Robin has whatever it is that they're looking for. So Robin is trying to just like figure everything out. Edwin is trying to help Robin. And they end up kind of going to Edwin's like family manor. And you really learn a lot about him as a character. He is like a bookworm, very quiet, very shy. He is like minimally magical. So he's kind of like looked down upon within his family. He's very quiet. He's very like bullied by the rest of his family, especially his older brother. But Robin is this like big, loud, boisterous like personality that like loves and gets along with everybody. And so it's definitely like an opposites attract. And I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was so much fun. I was not expecting the smutty scenes though. Not that it was a bad thing, but I wasn't expecting it. I was not aware that there are explicit sex scenes in this book. I think like 3 of them. And you know what? It was great. But if you do plan to read this and you haven't yet, just know there are some explicit sex scenes in this book. But they're done well and tastefully. I also read Her Majesty's Royal Coven. This is another one that I really, really enjoyed. I knew nothing about this going into it and was pleasantly surprised at how much I ended up enjoying it. I think I gave it 4 stars. We're following this group of girls, and we start out, they are very young. They're like 7, 8 years old, group of friends. And then we follow them, you know, many, many years later when they are older, like in their 30s. So these women are my age. So I loved that. We have, one of them is like a mom of 2, and she's kind of like sworn off like the magical world. She doesn't really want anything to do with it, even though she's a witch. And she doesn't want to tell her children or her husband that she's been married to forever that she is a witch. Then we have another main character, and she is one of 2 twins. Her twin was gravely injured in this like big civil war that they had and is comatose. And then the other twin is kind of just like living in solitude because her fiance was murdered within that war. And she just kind of, again, wants nothing to do with like the big coven and magic. We also follow, I think her name's Helene, and she is now the head of Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which is like the UK main, you know, known coven that works with the government. So it's like magic is like a known secret. Like certain people within the government know about it, but not like the average lay people. And Helene is ruthless. She is very much like, she's just going to get shit done. And she doesn't care who she has to step on or what she has to do to get done what she wants to get done and what she thinks is right. And you are not changing her mind. And she is also a mom. And we get some of her daughter. We get some of the perspective of another child who is kind of taken in by the coven and like held because they think that this child is what they call the sullied child, who is like the one prophesized to like bring about Armageddon and like release demons from the underworld. So this child is actually taken by the one twin who's still alive and like lost her fiance. And she's trying to get through to them. She's trying to like understand, like, is this the sullied child or is this just a scared and abused and neglected child that doesn't know their own strength? And then we also have another member of the former coven, and she is a fantastic character. She's probably my favorite. I can't remember her name. Like, there was a lot of names in this book. But she kind of left to start her own more inclusive coven because Her Majesty's Royal Coven is very straight and white, and she is neither straight nor white. And we also have her girlfriend, and absolutely love her. And they've started this like very inclusive coven that is extremely interesting, and I love watching them together and like getting to know some of their coven members. But yeah, that kind of covers our main characters. Like, there's a group of them. But I can't tell you too much because a lot of it will spoil, and you should really just go into this one knowing it is a coven of witches who were friends since childhood that have all kind of gone their separate ways, all have different kind of ideological beliefs, and some of them may or may not butt heads. Some of them may or may not be good people. And there's some really cool kids and some really cool moms in this book as well. Then we have the Stardust Thief. I might have actually given this one 5 stars. I don't remember. It might be 4 or 5 stars, but I really liked this book. This is, again, another like 1001 Nights kind of retelling. It was very reminiscent of City of Brass. I feel like if you liked City of Brass, you will like this. We are following our main girl, who is the night merchant, the midnight merchant. So basically she sells magical artifacts. But what everybody doesn't know is that her bodyguard is actually a djinn that has been with her forever. And djinn are outlawed and hunted down and murdered in this world. And then we're also following the second prince to the Sultan. And they end up having to go on this kind of like magical adventure to find a lamp. Need I say more? It was really, really good. I flew through this book. I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited for the next book to come out. There is a slight romance, but it's nothing overt, nothing that really drives the plot forward, nothing that is really even there in the foreground. It is very much like just kind of like mentioned passing, like, oh, he's kind of cute, or, you know, things like that. Not anything major. But I really liked this, and I'm excited to see where the next book goes because the ending was wild. Then I also read Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I really liked this one too. And book 2 comes out like this month, so really excited. This is a Chinese-inspired fantasy inspired by Chinese mythology and folklore about the moon goddess, and we are following her daughter. And her daughter ends up kind of like escaping the moon. And, you know, the kingdom doesn't know that she is a daughter of the moon goddess. They don't know that the moon goddess has a daughter. And so she's kind of like whisked away and escapes and is like kind of hiding in plain sight. And she becomes the friend to a prince. And they end up kind of having a romance. And then she ends up in the military. And this book is very, very fast paced. There's friends to lovers, betrayal, there's kind of an enemies to lover-esque, there is kind of a love triangle, but I think it's done really well and not in the typical like pining love triangle, will they, won't they way. It's just like, so she was with this guy and she's like, no, I can't be, like shit's not working out, so like maybe this guy, like he's kind of cool, and then she's like, but I still like this one. And it's just her like figuring herself out, and I really liked that. And we go on a lot of different quests to kill mythical beasts, and her whole goal is to free her mother. Like that is all she wants, is to free her mother from being kind of like held on the moon and not allowed to go anywhere else. So if you haven't read this one, I think it's really good. I'm obviously having a hard time talking about these books because I'm like, they're really good. But some of these I read like at the very beginning of the month, and I don't have my notes ready, so sorry. Then I read The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which is another like Chinese-inspired fantasy. And again, I really enjoyed this one. Our main character ends up sacrificing herself to the sea god, even though there was another girl that was supposed to have been the one to sacrifice herself to be the sea god's bride, but her brother was in love with the original girl, so she's like, screw it, and she just does it herself to kind of like protect her brother. And then come to find out, the sea god has been asleep, and that is why none of the brides that have been sent down to the underworld have appeased him. So she is trying to figure out what is going on with this sleeping sea god and save her people. Because he's like been asleep, there's been these terrible storms that are just killing everybody. And she ends up having to figure out what is going on in the underworld. But if she's there too long, then she will not remain human. So she ends up kind of like bound to this other guy who is the like one of the friends and protectors of the sea god, and they don't really get along, but he's like, they kind of have to work together, so like forced proximity. And it was fun. It was a good time, and it is a standalone. So, and the final book that I read was This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. And I wanted nothing more than to absolutely love this book, because do you see how absolutely stunning it is? I did not, though. I gave it 3 stars, and it's like I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and there were some things that really bothered me, like the romance was bleh. Like, I know Tahara Mafi loves her some Warner and Juliet, and this is kind of what it felt like, again, but not as good. So we're following this girl who is a djinn, and djinn are a lot different in this world. They're not outlawed. They're supposed to be equal to humans based on this law that was passed, so there would be no more war between them, but they're really second-class citizens. Like, they're not allowed to use their magic, and if they're caught using their magic, they're like imprisoned. And she ends up being the like servant in a noble household just to be able to get a job because no one wants to employ Jen. And she ends up having this like really weird enemies to lovers romance kind of with the crowned prince. And it's kind of icky. And it's like, he's kind of stalkerish. Because he's like, who is this girl? Like, initially, he just, like, sees her on the street and thinks she's, like, a spy from an enemy kingdom. So he follows her. But then he's like, she's so beautiful. And she's very not like other girls. And he's like, she's not like the rest. All these other bimbos and airheads that throw themselves at me. And she's not like them. And it's like, oh, God, shut up. So the romance was pretty terrible. There were a couple of times where I'm like, I'm just going to DNF. But I didn't. It's very Cinderella inspired, which again, I didn't know going in. There's a lot of things I did enjoy. Like I enjoyed the ending. It was kind of interesting. There's some stuff that happened. I'm like, wow, okay. Why couldn't we have done more of this earlier? But whatever. I probably will read book 2, but I probably will not order like the pretty Fairyloot Illumicrate, whatever this one was edition. So this book was just okay. It wasn't bad, but like there was a lot of things that I was like, meh about. All right. Well, that is everything that I read in the month of October. Like I said, that was a lot. That's a lot for me. Especially because October was like ridiculously busy and there were some days where I didn't read at all. And yeah, I just had a lot going on. So I'm really proud of the 8 books that I got through, even if there's 2 that I'm still reading and 1 that I DNF'd, but I think I did pretty good. And I am well on my way to getting through my Fairyloot and Illumicrate pile of all the books because I really just want to get to them. And I want to read them in the year that they're released. Like they're new releases and I want to be able to get to them and do full reviews and things like that. So let me know if you want any like full-length video reviews of any of these books that I mentioned because I will gladly do them. I'm trying to do more standalone book reviews even though they don't get the views. Like, I don't care. Like, I like them and I think people actually do like them. And honestly, while they don't get the views straight off, they get the views in the long run. As is evident by my 6 Crimson Cranes review, that is one of my highest viewed videos on my channel and still getting traffic every day, which is wild to me. But let me know if you want any book reviews for any of these because I will do that for you. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me. Let me know what you thought of any of these books if you have read them and if you want any reviews. My name is Jessie and I will talk to you next time. Bye.